Ever since I was a kid, music has been an integral part of my life, and thanks to my dad constantly blasting tunes in the car and in the house, or playing piano. So at a certain point, I had questions about him and his history with music, but when I'd pry as a child or as a teenager, the response was always, "Don't worry about it," or "It was nothing," or even "It doesn't matter." So I didn't go any deeper, because he was my dad and I was a kid.
Go away, you nut.
I really just wanted to know about this band he was in the 70s, this band called Gunhill Road. This part of his life that my family knew all about but wouldn't tell me. And the most I got back was, he was in a band. That's it. I mean, I've been in bands. Everybody's been in a band. Well, a lot of people have. So I let it go. Until I discovered 25 years into my life, it was much bigger than that. His group Gunhill Road made some real noise. They were top 40 on Billboard. And for my dad, this was something he loved and had a deep passion for, but had given it up decades ago. If you don't continue to do the thing that you love the most, you are going to want to do it again at some point in your life. So when that opportunity comes, will you let it pass by?
What is that? That's like a
Like
wart.
it sounds like Godzilla with an enema.
God's enema.
Right.
Oh, this is the discussion.
When I was down on the farm, old back had tracks on his arm. Instead of milking the cows, he shot horses. His wife was humping the hand on several acres of land, making the most of her natural resources, and all the eggs were rotten. All the pigs had styes. The gin was full of cotton, and the milk had flies. The hinges were so rusty that the barn doors cried when I was down on the farm, when I was down on the farm.
For years, people would say, "What do you mean you don't play?" And Leslie, at some point, she actually said to me, I mean, almost teary-eyed, which I told, she said, "Why don't you play piano anymore? I don't understand it. I mean, you really play so nicely, so beautifully." I said, "I don't know." I said, "The drive isn't there." For years, that's all I cared about. If I went to somebody's house, the first thing I would say is, "Do you have a piano at your house?" Could have been a party, could have been something. If there was a piano, that would have made me go quicker to the house. I don't think I've thought that way in 35 years.
25 years would go by, and then I'd see this is a 30-year reunion of it, but there was no impetus to really do that stuff. Songwriting just became a kind of, not a distant memory, but sort of. And the people that I worked with, they didn't really know that I had a band, because that was kind of in the Wayback, machine of people before they'd met me. And so.
Mark, what's this for?
He loved music as a little boy. He played the drums when he was very little. But music was always part of our lives because our father was a musician and our mother played the piano. They used to take us see jazz down in the city all the time. We always had music playing. They played the piano together and kid around and stuff. So it was always just part of our home.
My mother taught piano, though she couldn't teach me. You can't teach a genius. And she couldn't teach me. It was impossible. The great thing about the piano is even somebody who was retarded, like me, you just hit your hands. Eventually, you're going to hit something that sounds like it's okay. Then I started playing organ, in groups.
When I heard Steve play, I said, oh my God, he's like really good. I mean, he could play anything, by ear, and he just threw out a song and he played it.
Music was really like a life raft to me. I was sort of a skinny little kid with big ears, and as I got older, I got picked on more like in junior high and stuff like that, but it gave me sort of an identity and something that I was really good at that I never really had before.
He became sort of the musician of the family, and I think he sort of came alive when he was in front of people. And
I think the original thing was, I was watching the Beach Boys play, when they were doing bar chords and stuff, and I really wanted to play guitar. I want to be up there doing this kind of stuff. And then my mom knew her hairdresser or something. She had a kind of customized Stratocaster that she got for me. And then I started writing some songs.
I met Glenn, I think it was 1965, and actually I bumped into his brother, Bobby, at Mount Vernon High School.
We lived down in a basement together, and Steve came over, I think my stepbrother introduced me to him.
And as we're sitting there, Glenn walked in, and he goes, this is my stepbrother Glenn. I say, hey, how are you? Glenn plays guitar. I said, oh, great. Glenn takes out his Stratocaster, starts to play, and I'm watching this guy play, and I never saw anybody actually play leads. I never saw anybody do anything, frankly, and I was absolutely amazed that he was such a great guitar player. I said, oh boy, look at that.
I never thought I was that great a guitar player, so I don't know who Steve had heard.
I don't know how it happened next, but all of a sudden, Glenn and I are playing together.
He started playing piano behind me on some of the songs that sounded really cool. Then we got a bass player.
And then I got a hold of Gil, who I had played in high school with.
You're in a town where everybody's playing music when you're young, right? So I'm in a band over here, and Steve's in a band over there, and eventually it's a small town. Musicians get to meet each other. And Steve was a friend. We were two nuts together. And Steve came to me one time and said, do you want to play, the bass in the group? And I said, the bass? I said, why should I play the bass? I play the guitar.
Gil was just this very sweet guy. He would sit in our living room for hours, taking requests, playing the guitar, singing. He had this very sweet voice. It was like a perfect match for many of Glenn's songs.
But actually, we were at a party, and Steve says, you want to meet Glenn? And I said, okay. There's Glenn sitting in a chair, nice chair, with a neckerchief on. And saying, why would you wear a neckerchief? And he's, we're in the house here. It wasn't that kind of way, but he's been down in the city, maybe.
At the time, there were a few clubs in the village for performers. The bitter end was really the place you wanted to play. But I know it was a listening audience. It wasn't just a lot of hubbub or heckling or, when are you going to be funny or, play songs. The audience would come in, and I think the audience was respectful of the place, too.
I had my mom one time, actually she drove me down. I think it was this cold night, and I was, had my guitar, and so she parked in front of the bitter end. I said, just leave the engine running or you can just sit in the car because I don't think this is going to take very long. Paul Colby, who ran the bitter end, heard the songs. He said, there's something about these, I like your songs and stuff. Can you play tonight? So I ran back out and I said, Mom, go park the car because I'm going to be playing. And that was really what led to the bitter end.
As far as I know, the Gunhill Road was the only band that Paul ever managed.
I liked the way he wrote. I knew he was a potential.
And then Colby said, I want to have you open for the Ace Drum Company. And that was for 3 weeks.
Wow, we were there 3 weeks? That's interesting. Huh.
I'd like to introduce the rest of the group now. So please give them a warm round of applause because they're generally insecure. On my left, the world's greatest living authority on Superman and Superboy comics. How about a warm round of applause for Gil Roman on bass? Hey! Yeah! Woo! And on the piano, on this side, we're privileged to have this person with us tonight, really. Now he's a regular member of the group. Steve Goldich on piano. Yeah. Thank you. And in the middle, if you've noticed there's something here, there really is our guitar player and our songwriter, our chauffeur. He tries to be our lover, but we push him away. And something. How about a hand for Glenn Leopold on guitar?
Started out, it was just like sort of Glenn Leopold and we had and Steve and sort of backing up, and then it became more of a group with the three-part harmonies. And so we were looking for a name because everybody had group names, and we would ride the subway in and we would pass Gunhill Road, and one day we just looked out and I said, Gunhill Road, that's sort of a cool name. That was it.
So at the bitter end, there were benches. There were like school benches, right in your face. I mean, you see everybody, and it's like we're in somebody's house. So there's no place to go. You have to earn your keep. You find out what it means to be, you have to be in entertainment every second while you're there, and just be yourself.
Manager ran the bitter end. I mean, that's where we opened up for so many different people, you know, and a lot of comedians and stuff like that. So we've got our opening act chops, you know, by playing, you know, when he felt that we were ready, he would put us into the club. I remember when we first started playing there, it was like such a thrill to be in the, you know, in the bitter end.
Back there in the 60s or 70s, it was always a musical group and a comedy act.
Now, when we played, the act was essentially, you know, all the songs Glenn wrote, but then we would throw in oldies if we were playing for a longer period of time, and people just went nuts when we did that stuff. Literally nuts. They were institutionalized.
It was a great opening act.
If we didn't love them, we wouldn't have. We'd have said to Paul, you know, they're really upsetting our timing, so get another group.
The first time I heard them play, I was bowled over. I mean, I couldn't believe how good they were.
We were called by many people the best opening act. I can't say the best opening act in the history of the world, but the best opening act because we had 3 people who played 2 acoustic instruments. We had good harmonies, we were pretty good musicians, and we played very tight sets.
They never interfered with the closing act.
We were very non-threatening.
Well, we were nice guys. We didn't require anything, and we rarely, if ever, did not win over these audiences because we were from a whole different place. In those days, we used to do auditions live in recording studios. Somewhere along the way, Colby told us we auditioned at Mercury Records.
Back in those days, I mean, getting signed was like the holy grail of everything.
And Jay Lear, who ultimately produced the album, was there, and we recorded, my recollection was a handful of songs, but we did overdub. We spent 6 months recording.
I didn't know these guys, and when I first heard them, I thought, wow, these guys are really good. I like their stuff and everything. Because if you don't believe in what you're doing, then you might as well not do it. But I said, look, fellas, what we have to do is we've got to have 10, 11, 12 songs. I want your best stuff. What do you have? Well, I'll tell you, I think they had 5,000 songs. I think Glenn Leopold had 5,000 songs. He comes in with, I said, what are you, crazy? I said, you know, bring in 30 of what you think is the best and we'll go from there. We had free reign to do basically a lot of the stuff we wanted to do.
Welcome to the Escape Hatch. Tonight we're presenting Gunhill Road, and we have a sellout crowd, and we're glad to have you along to watch them.
42nd Street was released, got some airplay, but NEWFM was playing the album all the time, as were a lot of FM stations around the country.
A song like 42nd Street, which had the wonderment of a young person looking at the decadence of the world as it existed on 42nd Street, was very much the way I looked at New York City, and I played that song every single day.
On 42nd Street, where every marquee light discloses one more man's defeat, and women lounge in hallways, pancake makeup like a sheet of white paper. Sometimes I think the limits of existence are defined.
Kenny Rogers loved 42nd Street. He called me up and said, Paul, I want to record 42nd Street. He said, but I want a piece of the song. I said, no problem, you got it.
I don't know, there's some songs I think I can sing well and some I think I can't sing well. And when I heard that song, I thought, you know what, I think I could do this song. I love to sing harmony. I love to sing background parts. And we would sing in order to get the best sound on that record at that time.
I clearly played their music in New York more than anybody else during the time of their first album and maybe into the second album.
And I would make sure it got played on the radio in the morning on my way to school. And I wouldn't park the car, or I would sit in the car until the song was played before I would go into school.
Mike Harrison played it a lot, and Glenn and I took a 45. We sprayed it gold, the disc, not the label, put it in the frame, and we wrote in the bottom, "Playing this meant a million to us."
And it was a homemade gold record. I had never gotten anything like that before. I had never gotten a gold record. I went on to get over 100 gold records in my career, real ones. It was huge to me.
42nd Street.
I still get a kick when I play it. I get chills because it reminds me of how I felt at 22 years old doing that show in that city at that time.
Lounging hallways, pancake makeup like a sheet of white paper, of white paper, of white paper.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
And then, all of a sudden, the album's out. The Bitter End, we had our press party, and it was otherworldly to hear, in place of Gunhill Road, it was "Please Welcome Mercury Recording Artist Gunhill Road." Not, I can still remember. I said, "Jesus Christ, wow, that's weird," and that really meant a lot.
You knew just when I had something to say. You had a way to...
Gunhill Road was as big a group to me as the Bee Gees or the Beatles or Crosby, Stills and Nash. They were one of our stars. We didn't think local kids from the Bronx versus, Eric Clapton. It was all the same. They were great musicians.
Thought catcher, don't latch the door of your mind when there are so many.
Glenn and Steve and the band, they're riffing off of one another. They themselves are almost like comedians.
Would you please welcome the amazing Kreskin?
Gil would do an impersonation of Elvis that Glenn and I thought was so funny. I would play bass, Glenn would play guitar, he'd do Viva Las Vegas, and Gil would come out, right, and we would just laugh. We would be laughing the whole time.
City gonna set my soul on fire. Viva Las Vegas! Viva Las Vegas!
I started producing shows in '73, but I actually went to a concert before I was in the production of the shows at the college to see Poco. Gunhill Road opened for them. I had never heard of Gunhill Road up until that point. And they, as far as I was concerned, stole the show.
Neil Bogart and I were pretty good friends at one time, and I remember that he really loved the group and wanted to do something with them as well.
We ended up getting a deal on Buddha Records, when Neil Bogart was there, it was Kama Sutra and Buddha.
And their lyrics were wonderful, and what I loved about them was their music, and I loved the fact that they were passionate about it, they wanted to do it, and they wanted to do it right, and they were willing to let me experiment with some things. I think that's really all you need when you have a chance to work with somebody. You hire good people and let them do what they do, and I think they understood that concept.
Back when my hair was short, I was a White Sox sport, wore pointed shoes and pig pants. Drank till my eyes were red, hit Playboy neath my bed, slicked my DA for the dance. When you dance.
What was the gestation of that? The reminiscence I have of that one's just got the big full circle of life where, you go and you become a hippie and then all of a sudden you come back and your hair is short at the end.
The stars played all night pinball in bars and dreamed about love. We were experts on love. We talked our way all around it. And even if...
And then, of course, course, you know, it was re-recorded for a single. You know, Neil Bogart had said, well, if you change the lyrics and you up the tempo of this thing, this could be a hit.
He had these set lyrics that were, you know, about Screw Magazine and the hypocrisy of the Christianity.
I thought it was just an interesting piece of music. The more I heard it, the more I realized there were some drug connotations in there. And I think we actually did a version without them.
And the next thing you know, we recorded it, and Neil had a very good sense of what worked and didn't, and the record started to move up the charts.
It was probably just after, I think they played it at the school, that that song became popular. So it's kind of a nice feeling to feel like you had something, not something to do with it, but just something that they kind of progressed, I guess, into this top 40 band.
Riding around in the summer of '73, hearing Back My Hair Was Short come on was just like, it was surreal.
No lack of faith undermines it, 'cause it's the hope that we'll find it that makes us go on.
Songs that make it are songs that have something to say. Gunhill Road has a new album full of songs that have something to say about all of us.
We pushed on to Savannah like those Union boys in blue, and we left the tune piano in each place that we all passed through. Town after town and feeling so down must be a...
Three young men from New York City, Gunhill Road is a rare blend of thoughtfulness and boogie.
Bring the blessed ocean to my door. You can say it's a lie.
Take a ride down Gunhill Road on Kama Sutra Records from the Buddha Group.
I've been sailing.
The album comes out on Buddha, and we get a lot of airplay on FM. And it has the potential to really start doing something. And as we're watching the charts, and those days there were 3 charts. There were Billboard, Record World, and Cashbox. And it starts to move in all of them. And we hit the charts at 88, which was amazing. To be in the charts, oh my gosh, that was a big thing. And every week we'd wait. And then it started moving up, and it hit number 20 in Record World, I think, 24 in Cashbox, and 40 in Billboard. But Billboard had only got the 40 because they changed the charts the week they put us in. And I think they even mentioned us in the article because we didn't move up the way we should have. It made no sense because it wasn't as though our record was not doing as well. It's the way they decide, or the way they read the data, basically.
Neil Bogart felt that it was doing pretty good. It was on the way up. And the Billboard, when they changed the format of how they play songs, and he got so fucking mad he called up his friend.
Back When My Hair Was Short is a brilliant piece of pop art, but it's kind of sad that that's what they're known for beyond the music intelligentsia that I represented and that was part of that whole underground radio scene.
We're not just a top 40 group, and I think that has to be impressed because... No, we're not. We're a folk rock group, and I think a lot of older people are going to shy away from the club only because they think that we're... well, Back When My Hair Was Short is indicative of us, but it's really not. It's part of the thing we do.
You're wrong. He was a pain in the ass. He wanted, I don't know, he thought he was a star. The group that had the hit record out there. You know, be pleased. Enjoy your happiness.
There were times when Gil was really difficult to deal with. When we were on stage, we could get past it. But at a certain point, it was more and more difficult because he created all types of issues for us. He didn't seem to be interested in the things we were interested in. So we were always separate, except when we were on stage.
It was always did seem like it was Steve and I doing our thing, and then, you know, Gil would kind of show up. And it was just like 2 and then kind of a third.
We felt like Gil balanced the band. I mean, he seemed more serious, but I think maybe in reality, Glenn and Steve were more serious about it.
My memories are always Glenn and myself going to a bookstore, going to a restaurant. If you look at the picture of us in front of Mr. Kelly's, right, in the facade, the 2 of us are there. Mr. Kelly's is here. There's no Gil. Gil! No, I don't know. Even when we were flying to LA to do Midnight Special, Gil wasn't even on that flight. That's when Frankie Avalon sat down next to us for the flight. I just don't understand where he was all the time. He was never around.
Back when my hair show had drums on it, we got the guy who had the drum part to come out, and that's why I'm saying we shared a room and we ordered a lot of liquor. Him and I were in the same company, and they were paying for this little excursion out into the Midnight Special. I think Steve and Glenn weren't there because they were, whatever they were doing, maybe going to sleep or something. And so we were up and getting drunk. And we probably stayed up, late, and here we are, knock, knock, knock. We got to be out of here at 9 or 8 o'clock or 9. So we're here still half drunk, the two of us, and we got to go and be filmed and play this song, right? So that's where we're at.
Gil was too erratic. Gil wasn't consistent. I was thinking, he's just not in the same place we're in. It's just the way it was.
Reminded me of Pete Best. When they kicked, the Beatles kicked Pete Best out, they didn't kick him out. They had somebody tell him that he's out for them because they didn't have the guts and the courage to face somebody and say, this ain't working. Because we're too young, maybe, at that point. So they sent me a letter.
They dropped some hints, but eventually I think Gil wasn't taking the hints.
He was not happy with a lot of things we were doing.
I got a letter from, probably from Paul Colby that said, this is yours and this is your part, and whatever I needed out of that, and thank you very much, and whatever it said. I think I still have the letter.
They let Paul be the bad guy in it, and I think Gil never forgave Paul, and probably never really realized that Glenn and Steve kind of felt that he was holding the band back a little bit.
And you're shocked for a little while in your life. This is Christmas, because it's a creation of us. It's like anybody creates something. Mostly I remember the nice things about what happened, since parting ways was kind of weird with the group, for me, emotionally, because I helped create that thing with everybody. It's like we did it subconsciously. We didn't do it for money. We did it because that's what bands do.
I remember when you go out on the road and you play, it's not even like being married, because in marriage you have times when you split. When you're on the road, you're together constantly. And if you're not compatible, even to sit in the room together, it's very difficult. And it extends to every aspect of the business, from recording to playing live to doing things like this. And if you don't enjoy the company you're keeping with the other people, it makes it very hard.
Joining me in the studio today, my name is Paul Sanders, and the three members of Gunhill Road, Steve Goldrich, Glenn Leopold, and the new member, Paul Reich. Reich. I knew I'd have trouble with that.
We had a mutual friend who worked, he was a stage manager at the bitter end, and he just said, blah, 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 blah. And I went down there with my guitar, my bass, and we just started playing.
Paul, coming into the group, we know next to nothing about you.
And we're much happier that way, Paul. I want to.
This is the first band that I played with that's been known beyond 50 miles from where I live.
We're known 55 miles.
and also the first job that Paul played with us was on TV. His first shot out was on WABC's, thank you,
Yeah.
WABC's 6 o'clock news.
Yeah, that was a surprise.
Yes, we told Paul not to be worried about the lights. He said it
They
was
didn't worry me. They blinded me. They didn't worry me.
You couldn't see the strings.
Well, I could see the strings, but that was about it.
When Paul joined, I thought to myself, it'll never be the same. But he really has a lot of the same qualities.
Back when my hair was short was not peaky, but it was getting up there. Buddha forgot to re-sign us. Neil Bogart called into his office with Paul Colby. And Neil, with his arms around us and Paul Colby standing right next to us, said, look, we goofed. We're just we're just some Jewish kids from the Bronx. Come on, just re-sign.
What happened was when they reissued the second album with the newer cuts of Back of My Hair Was Short, the redone versions of Sailing and 42nd Street and adding Mr. Keyboards, there was a question about that being, they owed us another album.
And Glenn and I knew in advance that we didn't want to just re-sign. We were going to take them hostage, but we thought it was wrong that they weren't going to do some things for us when we had some power, is probably the wrong word, but we were in a position of strength.
When we tried to renegotiate our contract, which people do all the time.
Yeah, black guys called me once. He said, tell your three guys to back off. They got a little hit song and they're getting cocky. I can bury them as fast as I made them. You don't hold up the boss of the record company. You don't make demands.
Neil threatened, if you don't re-sign this deal, I'm going to pull the record and it's going to stop its rising the charts or whatever.
The manager's supposed to be the bad cop. That's the way it works. The manager's supposed to defray all of this stuff, and the manager's supposed to always take the side of the group. The people that he dealt with every day, there was a symbiotic relationship because they had to support the bitter end because their acts were there. Paul couldn't push too hard for the same exact reason, because these people were his bread and butter. And that's why it became difficult. This is where Colby dropped the ball. In place of saying, Neil, you're not being fair. They're not asking for money. They're asking for some guaranteed stuff so that they'll have a few more albums after this. And if we had pushed him hard enough, he couldn't have killed the record. He could have taken the promotion away. But we already were on the charts. We would have gotten a deal the next day with somebody. There's no question. We weren't unknown. We had made a little noise. And that's what Colby should have done. He should have said, well, you know what, Neil, we'll get back to you. Now, if Bogart had turned around and said, if you walk out right now, that's it, Colby should have said, then that's it. And you know what? If you don't want us, go fuck yourself. But he walked out. Because Bogart needed Paul the way Paul needed Bogart. It wasn't like there were thousands of clubs in the city.
Yeah, I mean, I think Paul, you know, it was a double-edged sword because he knew a lot of people because of the club, and then he also had to be diplomatic because of the club, and I just didn't want to push his power around too much.
In retrospect, we never should have left that office without some kind of better deal.
So we ended up kind of re-signing and you know, kind of in spite of ourselves, we ended up kind of being sort of blackmailed, but I mean, it was, we just signed because we just didn't want to jeopardize the momentum of the thing, so we did it.
That was the end, essentially. We ultimately sued Buddha because we did have our contract calls another album, but stupidly it didn't require it to get released. And how they could sign a deal, or rather give us a deal like that, is beyond comprehension. So that would have changed everything. Even if we didn't have any success, it would have been at least one more album, which probably would have led to something else.
There's no end like that. It peters out. It peters out. They play smaller and smaller venues.
From an album we did 1971. This was called Gunhill Road 1971, was it? That's right. This is our 17th album now. It was our first album on Mercury Records. This was the second song on the first side. I was saying yesterday, this album is available in the Library of Congress. There's one copy there. I think there were 7 copies printed, and we got 2 apiece. That's 7 copies, that's right. So if you're in Washington, go listen to it. I think it's probably never been played, as a matter of fact. It's Mercury Records, Gunhill Road, first stop, SR 61341. I see you're busy writing the number down, okay? So you get down there. I think both of our albums are down there. Maybe the re-release one also. It's one of the most requested albums next to Lithuanian Love Songs in the Library of Congress.
It was the winter, I guess, of '75. Things were kind of slow, you know, so I took off and went to Colorado and didn't come back, you know.
Yeah, all of a sudden I don't know where Paul was, and we were supposed to play somewhere. And then I called Paul's house, and Paul's father answered the phone, and Paul was in Colorado, and I said, oh, I guess call me. I don't know what happened, and Paul called, said he was staying out there. I said, oh, okay. I don't have any animus toward it. It just seemed like he sort of left. There was no conversation. By the way, in 2 weeks, I'm probably going to leave.
I mean, he kind of left the group because he went to Colorado at one point, so we had to replace him with Larry.
All right, we'll start with Larry Cullen over here on bass. Hey. How you doing, Larry? Okay.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Larry Cullen.
Steve Goldrich.
And Glenn Leopold.
Better known as the Beatles.
How long have you boys been together?
Oh, about 5.5, 6 years. Larry just joined us about 2 months ago. And before that, there was a succession of bass players. So Larry's our 4th bass player. And he'll be going next week and we're the 5th bass player. No, he'll be staying, actually.
We did it just the 2 of us. And we were playing, you know, a lot of state schools, Cobleskill and Canton and, you know, whatever these schools were. And people would come up to us and say, I don't understand, you guys are here, what are you doing here? And we would say, we don't know what we're doing here either.
We were auditing classes.
No, I think they kind of got caught in that crossfire of when music was changing from one genre to another. And it's nobody's fault. Some make it and some don't.
We weren't making enough money to really, to live from these, playing these college gigs. And we kept looking for record deals, and Steve would call me up. We were like two Jewish yentas. Steve would say, Kobe's not doing anything for us. And I was still writing songs and stuff, but nothing was happening.
Thank you. The clapping was lovely. Thank you for clapping.
It took you a little while to get started, but when you finally got there, it was abysmal. We've been staying in motels outside of the university, and there's something, we always thought motels had phones in the room until we went on this tour. And you realize that a phone is a luxury. Take my wife.
Take my wife, please.
Please.
Take my dogs, please.
Take my pods, please.
Take my socks, knees.
Take my BVDs.
No lowbrow humor on our part. Everything is really high up there.
Okay, anyway. We've had a good time on this tour. We hope the audiences have too.
We've had a wonderful time.
We started out this way 7 years ago, actually, as two people. We've gotten a little bit more retarded since then, but we
were joined at the hip 7 years ago.
We used to be very shy. Now we just are crazy. Right?
Yeah. Really crazy.
Okay.
Great.
And then somewhere along the line, I had tracked down or whatever Tomcat Lana, and he now had his own record label called Tomcat Records. I went out to California, to meet with Tom, and I took my guitar, and then he had these offices in Beverly Hills and very swank, and I was playing some of the newer stuff, and he said, where have you been for the last 2 years, and I said, this is going to be great, because now I'm going to finally sign. I'm going to be a singer-songwriter. And so I arranged to move out to California, drive out there. And I said to Steve, this is a sort of chance, and because the group's not going anywhere, we don't seem to be doing anything. And so that's precipitated my move, out to California.
Well, we could see it happening. You could see we were working less. We didn't have a recording contract. You could just tell. It was gradually minimizing and diminishing. And finally, Glenn told me he was going to be going to California, which was difficult because all of a sudden the person I was closest with was leaving. And then the girlfriend I had broke up with me August 1st, 76. May she rot in hell for eternity. But I'm not holding any animus toward her. So now he's gone. I don't have a girlfriend. And I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, this is weird. I'm like alone here, kind of. I played with a few people, but it was a very odd period. I was 25 years old. Thinking, God, this is a weird thing. What am I going to do now? Not what am I going to do now, like career-wise. What am I going to do now? It was the end of a 7-year period. It's a weird thing. It's an odd place to be.
I still would write songs in my spare time. I'd bang on the piano and write songs and stuff, and occasionally I would play like at the Blah Blah and some other little clubs. But that all kind of went away once I was working steadily. Once the paychecks, became, increased and everything, and the music just went by the wayside.
But then finally it sort of, it worked itself out, and then I think I was reasonably happy, and that was that. But the music part changed, because at a certain point I really didn't seem to be that interested in playing anymore. I don't know what happened, it just fell by the wayside.
So we didn't spend a lot of time together, and then he got married, then he had kids, and we were just on kind of different tracks. It was never like a falling out or anything. It's just, we just had other lives, and we were just, and then, over the years, I guess, his business kind of took off in a different direction, pretty much unbeknownst to me.
You know what? One of the things that people don't realize, I think, a lot about what opportunity is, and it doesn't make a difference what field you're in, opportunity is always positive, whether it seems that way at the time or not. Later, if you're smart, you learn from every experience that you had.
Everyone who ever stood at the edge wanted someone to push them. So I say to everybody, don't wait to get pushed, jump. If you're fearful at opportunity, that's how you know it's a real opportunity. If you're scared, that's the time to act.
The opportunity doesn't always come along, and dynamics change and tastes change. What the public wants change, the culture changes. The opportunities just aren't always there to have that second chance. And in terms of a group, how many groups can reform or want to be together and want that revitalization, which, all parties have to be willing. So, all the planets have to be in the right place.
And I was close to Fordham Road, and the road that we stayed as far away from as we could was Gunhill Road, because the kids on Gunhill Road could beat the crap out of you.
As it happens, I was at an Eric Anderson concert at the Outpost in the Burbs, and they said, you know, in 2 or 3 weeks, we're having a tribute for Paul Colby. And I thought, wow, you know, I got to tell Glenn about this.
No, I said, you know, I know nothing about it. So he gave me a number to call, and that kind of led to the benefit concert, which led us to, I called Steve first. I said, would you want to play this?
You know, my first thought was, wow, I got to play again. And, you know, people, the analogy is like a bicycle. Yeah, it's not exactly like a bicycle. Because when you start pedaling, you have one option. You go straight or you fall off.
He got so nervous and so excited. And, you know, could he do it? And could he play? And he didn't know if he could play, couldn't remember if he remembered, and I kept saying, well, why don't you practice? No, he couldn't. He couldn't even bring himself to practice. He was so nervous and so excited.
It wasn't like, oh man, we're gonna play. It was more like, we're gonna play?
But what changed my opinion of Gunhill Road was an album that came out in the 70s that we played the hell out of on WNEW-FM. And there was even a modest hit single from it called Back When My Hair Was Short, which I play on the
So let me reach out to Gil. I called Gil. I hadn't spoken to Gil in a long time.
And I said, you want me to sit in a plane for 6 hours to go somewhere to give a tribute to go out of my, whatever it is it took to do that, to Paul Colby? What the hell did he...
And I tried to explain to him that this was not about Colby, it was about us. And we'd be having a terrific time, etc. I said, look, you don't need to decide today, but you got to decide reasonably soon. I think Glenn, I said to Glenn, maybe you want to reach out to him as well. And Glenn spoke to him, and neither one of us heard back, and that was it.
I said, I want to do this with you, but I don't, Paul's got nothing to do with it. He wasn't in the band. 3 of us were in the band. If you want to do what we were doing before, and just so people could get tickled to see it somewhere, I'll go do it. Let's go do it. It'd be fun. I told him on that conversation, I don't want to do it. So he said, well, think about it. I told him, I don't want to do it. He said, but think about it. I said, okay, I'll think about it. And I already told him I don't want to do it, so I figured, well, I'm calling him back to tell him I decided again I don't want to do it.
And then he got a hold of Paul, and so at least I knew we had our eggs in a row.
There was no, should I do this? Do I want to do this? Is this where I want to go? There was no, you know, yeah, count me in. No restrictions, no guidelines, you know, we'll do it.
Turned out that Al Mercuro, who was running Outpost in the Burbs, had booked us at Montclair State, you know, years ago. So we had friends there, and so it turned out that was the beginning of this whole resurgence.
Gunhill Road has not played together as a group, here we go again with a time reference, in 36 years. But agreed to come here tonight to play for Paul. And I found out tonight, after all of this time, that they're not from Gunhill Road. They're from Mount Vernon. But they didn't want to call themselves the Mount Vernons, so they called themselves Gunhill Road.
The first thing was like swimming, you know, all of a sudden it was like the voices all blended. So it was kind of like everything, all the stars were aligned for a homecoming.
Let's see if this...
Sometimes I think the world ends on 42nd Street, where every marquee light discloses.
It was like riding a bike. They got back on after being off for so long. Their harmonies were still there, and I think they hit it.
You know, I thought they did one of the best sets, if not the best set.
The entire group was so much fun that night.
And so to see them come back together, I think rekindled for him a lot of personal feelings and a lot of relationships, and certainly for our family, it sort of brought to life, it kind of rekindled sort of that magic of those years when we were younger. Glenn's wife, who he was married to for 30 years, had never seen him perform in the band, so to be sitting next to her at that show and watching the tears coming down her eyes to see Glenn actually sort of back in that milieu, back in playing and performing, was pretty special. And for my mom, who was almost 90 at the time, to be part of that was pretty amazing.
There was a part of him that came to life. It was like a spark. It was great.
It was huge for me because it was like
I actually got this chance, something I never would have thought I would get to do, which was to see them in concert.
Oh, come on. I was proud of it. Come on. But to me, it was a moment that I created or tried to create. And to see them on stage, I knew I put them there. It gives me pleasure.
It's heroin and hot dogs and spaghetti bye.
You just wanted more. I mean, I remember I just wanted them to get together again.
Everyone couldn't stop talking about it. They thought it was just the best thing, you know, in the world to see him do it, and he was so happy, before and after.
And then he said for the first time in 36 years, I mean, it gave me the chills. It still gives me the chills, sort of. Because I wasn't hearing it that it was me. It was, wow, that's a long time. 40 years later. Well, what do you mean 40 years? How's that possible?
Wanna buy a wristwatch? The tattooed con man says you can get something for nothing if you try. And walk inside the peep show.
Here's what it is. Glenn, myself, and Paul, as different people, I think all had very similar internal conflicts is the wrong word, about this because it was something none of us had done in decades together. And I wasn't looking to Paul or Glenn to see if they were nervous. It was after the fact. In retrospect, just conversation. You seem so calm. No, not calm. I wasn't calm at all. But that was my perception.
Are we gonna get a new album?
Yeah, I'll go tomorrow to the store to buy a new album.
All right.
You know, my mom, who was in a little rollator and stuff, we brought her out to Jersey, you know, to see the concert, and she met Steve's son, Eric, and Spencer, and then Steve hadn't seen my mom for a while, and so she got to see the concert. So after the concert, I said, "Well, how'd you sound?" "Oh, you sounded wonderful." Well, about 3 months later, she got suddenly ill, and her sort of heart kind of gave out, and so I came back to see if we could get her on her feet, whatever, and we did, but she didn't really, she was too old to kind of make a rally. And so anyway, we were in the hospital, and it was like one of these other, like a bad movie, like my brother, my sister, and I were in this hospital room, and we were playing the second album, just been re-released, and we were playing Sailing, and my mom was singing Sailing, and we're all singing Sailing, and I'm going, yeah, it's like a bad Hallmark movie, except I'm living this thing, And I said, it's like if you saw us in a movie, you go, what a schmaltz festival this is. And so so I said to my mom, they were putting her to bed, and I said, well, maybe I should get back and go back in the studio and record. And she goes, why not? So, so then when she passed away, like in July of that year, that's what's kind of, because you get the sense when your parents go, like, if you're not going to start to, do this stuff, you're just going to say, well, it's one of those things I should have done.
Won't you come center stage? You've been tripped up by the script. Holy mo.
I'm having a petite mal here.
What time's the other piano player coming?
He's in the well.
Won't you come center stage? You've been tripped up by the script, but now we've reached the final page. Won't you come?
I remember when we first walked in, the first day we started to record, it was that, whoa, this is now real.
One day I got a phone call from Steve Goldrich, and they want to record a new record. I got in the impression, and the first time that they walked in and the group together, was that the chemistry was there. Paul, which he is absolutely an amazing musician.
Paul's guitar and stuff was really, really a revelation to me. I thought he was just this tall guy that just sort of,
I didn't even think you were tall.
He was just this guy that kind of stretched out. And I mean, we never really heard him play guitar, so all of a sudden he was like doing all this tasty stuff.
This album is the three of us. That's why this album is the first opportunity for Paul to be an equal member. I'd like something to happen with this so Paul would have the opportunity to experience this for the first time. His vocals, his playing, all these things. are what make this different, because for the first time, Paul is an integral part of every song on this album.
Now I get to sit in that chair and say, why don't we change this part? And I'll add this, and I'll keep doing this until we get it right. And why don't you change? I never did any recording, you know. It's a whole different ball game, you know. But being part of the process is just wonderful, you know. And to be able to put my 2 cents in and have it mean something, you know. Marvelous, just marvelous.
Now, nobody is a bigger fan of Glenn's music, short of Glenn, than me. There's one piece in the song after the bridge when it's the second line and Glenn's voice breaks. It cracks a little bit. And every time I hear it, it almost forms a tear in my eye. I can't explain why. Art touches everybody to some, you know, to some. And that does it to me. For the first time in Gunhill Road, we're doing some of my stuff. Now, the stuff we did, the 5 songs of mine on this, were all written by me in the 70s. And that was one of the caveats for me, that when it was brought up about us recording again, I said to myself that if we're gonna do it, I'm gonna have to do some of my material this time. You know, life is short, and not that I had this burning desire to do it, but if we're gonna do it again.
What a magical evening. It's amazing, and it's an honor. I think it's an honor for all of us to be here tonight. This is a magical night, and what a special crowd. Back when my hair was long, 42 years ago, I hosted the morning show on WNEW-FM in New York. Tonight is one of the most exciting nights because it goes all the way back to the heart of the golden era. And that's what this is a celebration of.
The Bitter End is where this all was born, and it's just a fantastic place. I mean, we haven't been back in there for ages.
It's so different than it was. There was no, first of all, no Dwayne. This building wasn't here. No, that wasn't there. There was no Dwayne Reed there. There was nothing there. There was nothing there. There was nothing there. I mean, there were things there. There was none of this stuff.
Are these the people that have played here? Are we on this list?
I never got a poster.
That's going to be very emotional because we were abused there for so many, for so many years. But no, it's fun to do new stuff, and then we got the older stuff too, which some people are just dying to hear. And
it's really great.
I think it's going to be a blast. I think it's going to be unbelievable, amazing, because these 3 guys are going to be on stage over there, and they wouldn't believe it that they're standing on stage there.
I think it's going to be a very emotional thing, and we've got a lot of people there that have known us over the years. But now, you know, we're back for our second 15 seconds of fame. And by golly, time's up.
Let's bring them on. Glenn Leopold, Steve Goldrich, Paul Reich, ladies and gentlemen, Gunhill Road.
Plug yourself in.
Try it without the plug.
What?
Try it without the plug.
Off to my right, bright neon light tells me to eat here. Oh, what kind of chance, blind circumstance caused us to meet here? Please understand what I have planned is going wrong. Been in this city too long. Been in this city too long. Da 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 da.
I I think last night at the bitter end, 40 years later, was the greatest moment at the bitter end in the last 40 years.
I felt like I was, 20 again. I mean, some of my friends were there who knew Steve way back when.
All the banter came back and all the joking, and there was as much time spent laughing as there was playing.
It was fun and seeing all my friends and people from junior high and high school, college, people from California came out. I mean, so it really spanned the whole decade of friends and relatives, and it was great. It's still just three guys doing it. There's no smoke and mirrors. It's just, for better or for worse, we're letting it all hang out there. And, especially at our age, letting it all hang out, maybe a poor choice of words.
We did prepare a couple little things, just in case. We couldn't do everything because we only had a short rehearsal time of 40 years.
I'm just gonna sing. In the obituaries yesterday, I read that Charlie Goldrich passed away. Ouch! To everybody reading, he was just another man. But he was the last surviving member of the Baked Bean Band. Everybody, it was the Baked Bean Band that played behind the hot dog stand.
They had many years where they didn't talk, and then they would talk, and they wouldn't talk. So Glenn coming here was like a long-lost brother. It was a very emotional time, and they clicked. I mean, it was like, boom, they were right back.
They have the potential to have the best years ahead of them, even in their 60s. Why not?
The period of time when they were in the studio is probably the happiest I have ever seen Steve.
It wasn't unfinished business. It was this amazing time in my life, and all of a sudden, it's back again.
I kind of look at it as, I don't know what's going to happen next. I can't even imagine or think, or do I want to dwell too much on it because it could be disappointed, or it's going to go where it's going to go,
I think anybody who is fortunate enough to have a second chance in any realm of their life and doesn't take it's a very foolish person. This isn't a dress rehearsal. This is it. You get one time around, and if you seize the opportunities given to you, I think it's fantastic.
They represent something that I think is important for everybody to know, and that is there's far more to the iceberg than the commercial tip. As you get older, you look back and you say, oh, there's where the path went. I learned the music, and I was this, and I did this, and I did this, and then I did something else, and that didn't work out, but then I did something else creative, and then I doubled back around, and you can, things become sort of clearer. It's great. I mean, it's kind of like a dream come true.
Sometimes I think all the people that go through everyone's lives, and at certain points how important those people are, and they are. And then it just, you move on and somebody falls off the train kind of thing, or maybe jumps off the train or walks away, and then someone else comes in. And I think about sometimes all the people that have gone through my life, and to the extent I can remember some of them, and I think, whatever happened to that person? Most of the relationships didn't end because something bad happened, just stuff happens. Everybody's had that happen. That was sort of what this was. Wow.
Take a subway ride to Gunhill Road. Lay the day aside on Gunhill Road. She's waiting there for me under a painted canopy, and from the platform I can see her face. Climb 3 flights of stairs on Gunhill Road.
Gunhill Road. It's what she doesn't say, wrapped in that soft and silent way, that makes me wanna stay and never go. I've been kicking round this lonely town for so long.